There is a large industry led by pro-Israel activists such as Mr. Bernard Lewis, Daniel Pipes, Martin Kramer, and many more. And they all write for both think tanks and major newspapers. The pro-Israel activists are no longer satisfied with killing and plundering land in Palestine. They see every Muslim as an enemy. And in every all around the world, wherever there are organizations, wherever there are Muslims doing things, their agent provocateurs, their spies and researchers are usually targeting them. And people have to wake up to this, that there are people who would join you and try to encourage you to self-destruct. Anyway, that's something I need to speak about later on. Now, when one looks at the entire spectrum of products designed to capitalize on the 9/11 to target Islam, we see products ranging from newspaper articles and talk show programs to drama documentaries and multi-million-dollar blockbuster movies. They all have the one theme in common, which is that practicing Islam makes one a potential terrorist. Now, we do not have time or resources right now to do a comprehensive analysis of all the products, but there is one particular piece of research that would be, in my view, a representative sample of this new genre. And I believe every Muslim should be aware of its existence, the existence of such documents, and in particular this document. I'm highlighting this document in particular because of the impact it has had in some areas of the Islamic discourse, and I think this is important. It has become the spin doctor's Bible for reforming Islam. It is published by one of the American leading think tanks. It's called the RAND Corporation, which lists among its clients the government of the United States. The research was part funded by the conservative Smith Richardson Foundation. It is a clever collection of spin and malicious scheming, a blueprint to bring conflict among Muslims in the interim and eventually form a new religion for the next generation of Muslims. Now, another point need to be emphasized here is that 9/11 did not only serve as a pretext for military action, but it has also been used as a pretext to create systematic plans to disconnect the next generation of Muslims from their heritage. The need for such an objective is rooted in the pro-Israel neoconservatives' fear that the Quran is preventing people from seeing the need for Israel. Prior to the invasion of Iraq in March 2003, the pro-Israel Deputy Defense Secretary of the United States, Mr. Paul Wolfowitz, said that we need an Islamic reformation, and I think there is real hope for one. Yes, this is Mr. Wolfowitz. We need an Islamic reformation, and I think there is a real hope. There's Mr. Wolfowitz. We need an Islamic reformation, and I think there is a real hope. There's Mr. Wolfowitz. Now, another point need to be emphasized here is that 9/11 did not only serve as a pretext for military action, but it has also been used as a pretext to create systematic plans to disconnect the next generation of Muslims from their heritage. The need for such an objective is rooted in the pro-Israel neoconservatives' fear that the Quran is preventing people from seeing the need for Israel. Prior to the invasion of Iraq in March 2003, the pro-Israel Deputy Defense Secretary of the United States, Mr. Paul Wolfowitz, said that we need an Islamic reformation, and I think there is real hope for one. Yes, this is Mr. Wolfowitz. We need an Islamic reformation, and I think there is a real hope. There's real hope for one. Now, if these plans are allowed to succeed, I believe the consequences would be worse than any military invasion we have witnessed so far, because this is a plan of assault on the very core of one's identity, on the very core of our identity. Muslims do not define themselves through skin color or facial features, geography, or common bloodline, as it is in the case of the Jewish tradition. Muslims are called Muslims because they follow Islam. We are defined through the prism of our faith.
We are Muslims because we believe in the Quran and we follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one can survive the invasion of one's land and the pillage of one's wealth, but the invasion and the conquering of one's mind is catastrophic in the ultimate sense, which is described in Arabic as halak. This plan, as I see it, is the hollowing out of faith and filling it with embalming fluid, or embalming fluidity, if you like. Everything is fluid in this one. Pages of the Quran flowing in and out, and the free-for-all fiqh, where we'll have these clever spin doctors to tell us which part of our history to forget and whom we should follow. What they fail to realize is that Islam is not a dead corpse lying on the table for them to operate. Islam is still alive in the hearts of millions of Muslims, breathing the oxygen of divine guidance. An Orientalist called me the other day, a few days ago, and he wanted my opinion on progressive Islam. So I asked him to define progressive Islam, because it's, as I said, very fluid. Everyone of the few thousand people who have accepted and are propagating progressive Islam, if we say there are 4,000 to 5,000, there are 4,000 to 5,000 versions of progressive Islam. So I need to know. And he defined it as, he said, I think the Islam that gives up the imperial past and look forward to the future. I asked him, what do you do when you're down? Don't you enjoy thinking about the good old days? Right all around the world, Muslims, we live in a cruel and unjust world where Muslims are downtrodden and exploited everywhere they turn. Most of the refugees in our world today are Muslims, and the best thing you could think of is for them to relinquish one of the few sources of comfort they have. Don't you know that thinking about good times when you're down is a way of avoiding depression? He apologized, saying, yes, you're right, that's a very acute comment, I need to go away and think. Anyway, now to come back. Obviously, this exercise is not only about avoiding depression, but also to draw inspiration. If Islam was backward looking, as these opportunistic pseudo-scholars would have you believe, then Islam would have ceased to exist several centuries ago. The fact is that Islam is thriving in the modern world because of its vitality and versatility. We are overrepresented in many modern fields, in medicine, in computer science. Being at the cutting edge of medicine does not necessarily prevent one from practicing Islam. Being at the cutting edge of technology does not prevent you from practicing Islam, or practicing Islam does not prevent one from being at the cutting edge of technology or medicine or any other field. Now, anyway, to come back to the RAND Corporation document titled Civil Democratic Islam Partners, Resources and Strategies, as I said, which is used as a handbook by many policy makers and strategists around the world. The opening chapter begins with a reference to 9/11 as the impetus for this new urgency in this field. It is written by, and wait for it, a fiction writer. Yes, it is written by a fiction writer. Her name is Cheryl Bonnard. She was trained as a sociologist, but obviously she's now become the new Sheikha by virtue of being married to an Afghan, Zalmay Khalilzad, who is also a very interesting character who we'll deal with later on. He is the first Afghan neoconservative. Yes, and suffice it to say about him is that during the 1980s he worked in the State Department's Policy Planning Council for none other than Mr. Wolfowitz. Paul Wolfowitz was his boss in the 1980s.